And go.
Yes, we are live on the Kink Tank, and this is our special Bump to Tuesday Thanksgiving edition. And we've got a nice group of people here that we were going to talk about experience. Experience in kink, experience in the kink community, what qualifies for experience, whether experience is good or bad, and if you don't have it, how do you get it? So I think, Shane, you had mentioned when we were talking about maybe doing this topic about what qualifies as experience. I'm sure you have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I kind of jump into things, and I've kind of learned to wait until you go, well, here, there's a specific question I wanted to ask, and I've usually waited for that. I'm not used to getting thrown in the deep end of the pool. But I think what I found interesting is, as much as anything, the way people frame experience. You know, it's not good enough anymore that people say, you know, I have experience. People really seem to want to, you know, I don't know if justify is the right word, but sort of validate the experience that they have. It's not just, I've been in the kink community for so long, but there are things like, you know, I studied under so-and-so, or, you know, my mentor was so-and-so. There seems to be this sort of sense of coattailing with some people, because it seems important to them that their level of experience somehow have a greater value than just what everybody else seems to accumulate by attending and being there and participating.
Okay, so they can't just say that they have experience. They have to prove it somehow.
I don't know if prove it somehow is right, but my judge of experience when I talk to people or when I see people is really how much I see them out. You know, we'll get into this a little bit later, but when we talk about, you know, how do you get experience, one of the things that I've always found fascinating was talking to bottom types or to tops who say, you know, I want to play with people. Bottoms say they won't play with anybody without experience, so I don't know how to get experience. And one of the things that I've found is that simply participating seems to give you a reputation for your character that can often lead into play. You know, people trust your character and so are more inclined to trust you and play because they realize that you're not sort of a complete asshat or without common sense. And so I think people try to jump in too early and say, well, I don't know how to get experience. And the best way to get experience, in my opinion, is to get to allow people to get to know you. You know, to understand what your character is, and that takes time.
Yeah, I agree. Sorry. All right, welcome, Josie. And we've got Josie and Katie and Shane and Al and Michael all in here. Josie, I think your mic might be muted now. I did that by myself before, but you might have to undo it yourself. There you go. So the best way to get experience, you think, is by meeting people?
Yeah, I guess in my opinion, there's no real, and this is going to sound sort of bizarre and trite or flip, but I don't think there's really any replacement in terms of experience for actual experience.
Okay.
You know, I mean, I don't think you can say, well, I read about this and have somebody trust you without understanding what your character is, or in terms of styles of play, seeing you do it.
Okay. I guess when we're talking about experience, I mean, people, non-kinky people might sort of take this conversation and you know, talk about sex in the same way. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have any experience. How do I get experience? I want some experience.
Yeah. Oh, do I want some experience?
Yeah, exactly. But is there? I mean, I think that there is a, you know, something that you have to consider when you're considering kink experience, when you're talking about potentially dangerous things. It's a little more important to me. You know, being with somebody who doesn't have experience in sex, it's like, okay, well, we'll just take a leisurely walk through this journey. It's not, you know, or somebody who, how much convincing does it take if you're an inexperienced sexual partner and you're with an experienced sexual partner? How much risk is there of problems, injuries? You know, in the kink world, it kind of becomes an important thing, vetting people for their experience. Agreed?
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah, I agree too. You know, I also believe that when it comes to experience, number one, the word experience has different meanings for different people. So if I meet subject number one and he says, "Well, I'm experiencing this subject," let's say in kink or being a dom, it means different than dom number two when he tells me that he is experienced. You know, so just because somebody tells you, "Yes, I have experience," you know, we have learned to take that with a grain of salt, and this is where it goes back to the character of the person. You know, it's like, okay, this person says they do have experience, but we will see. You know,
Right. So,
which one of those two peoples they are. The ones that, what does experience mean to them?
yeah. Does it mean some kind of play, some kind of special activities, or does it mean in DS or power exchange relationships? You kind of have to be specific because kink is a pretty wide umbrella there.
Well, yes, not only that, for I have met people that for them having experience meant that they have participated once or twice in some type of activity, and for them that meant that they had their experience in that activity. Let's say wielding a bull whip, just because they did it 2 or 3 times and they made it, they made it crack. For them, that their experience. For somebody else in the leather community, being an experienced wielder of the bull whip means somebody's been beating people with it for 20 years. You
Right.
know, so it's always that just like when you first open, just a statement that I'm experienced with X subject doesn't really mean anything on itself. Now, going back to what you said about if you do not have experience, how do you gain experience? Yes, the character thing is the most important, I would say, because one of the first things you need to do is you got to be honest, with other people and with yourself. If you are unexperienced about something, the only way you're really going to gain good experience eventually will be about anybody that's being honest with everybody that, hey, I'm completely unexperienced on this, until eventually you will run into somebody that will be willing to take you under your wing and either coach you from either side, either as a peer or a counterpart,
Hmm.
in whatever activity you're trying to gain experience.
Hmm. And not just experience of the kinds of play that you're into. One person can say they have experience with this kind of thing or these dynamics, um, but I think the medium of that experience, that's something that we used to laugh about. It's happening a little less these days, I think, but sort of people coming into kink relationships with the idea of I'm experienced, but that experience meant an awful lot of reading online. It meant some kind of distance DS relationship that wasn't a face-to-face, in-person thing. And a lot of us were like, oh, that I guess that's some kind of experience, but does it lead to any cred? I don't. That depends on who you're talking to, I suppose.
Yeah,
It's
I
interesting,
believe it
right?
depends.
You made a comparison earlier that I thought was really fascinating, which is, whether we hear it more or less, we do hear it in the kink community. People saying I have experience because of my research that I've done into this topic, or because of the reading that I've done, or because, I have done this online. But to your point, if somebody came to you and said, yeah, I have lots of experience with sex, I read a lot of porn, like you would just go, are you insane? Like that, like I don't even know, it's like saying I know how to defuse a bomb because I watched, The Hurt
NCIS or
Locker,
something.
Right.
you know? And I just don't think there's ever an apples to apples comparison there.
Mhm. Well, let's kind of get to a different area of this, and people, when they're talking about their experience, they're trying to convey something to you, whether it's they're trying to get in your pants and they want to make sure that you know that they are prepared, equipped, ready for all of this, or that they'll be safe with you, or I don't know, some kind of pissing match, some kind of like I'm kinkier than you. I mean, is experience always a good thing? Because it seems like people with experience want to share what experience they have, but people without experience seems like they're either trying to make shit up or just staying quiet on the subject. So are we agreeing that experience is good?
I think we're agreeing that experience is good, but I think the point that you just made is really interesting, which is I tend to, and this is perhaps one of my own negative judgments, but when people tell me that they have experience, that's my first clue that maybe they don't. Because my experience so far is that with people that I know that have been around for a long time, they never talk about how long they've been around. Do you know what I mean? Like, there seems to be a maturity in terms of the experience where people don't feel compelled to convince anybody of how good, bad, or indifferent they are at something.
See, things are a little different down around here. If you want to get experience, you ask. You talk to people. You go out to places where things are happening, and people are generally nice enough to kind of show you what's going on, and then you can build on it from there. I mean, not everyone is obsessed with experience, you know?
Well, and to be fair,
I mean, you gain... Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was saying you gain experience by doing.
Right. And that's what I was saying about, in our community, I don't know that people are obsessed, and that's what I'm saying. It seems to be people who are new who have these types of conversations about experience. And what I have seen, what my practical experience with this has been, is that people who go out to a lot of events and, like I said, make themselves known to the people, whether munches or coffees, but especially things like classes and demos, even if they're brand new, people are already getting a sense that this is something that is interesting to you, that this is something that means something to you, but it also means you're dedicated to learning, to being a part of that process, which speaks to the character. And so generally those kinds of people, when they're at a demo, will say, oh, do you mind if I try this on you? And people are really more inclined to say, yeah, sure, I'm okay with that.
Okay, Katie, do you find that that in your community, when you're saying the best way to get experience is to ask, do you find that that's universally accepted by people? I mean, when that person at the event is, let's say, a little awkward, maybe a little unhygienic, let's say a little
I've met a few of those.
Well, is this I mean, some of us in the kink community kind of feel like, well, sure, I mean, I'm not agreeing to have a scene with you, but if this is something that you saw me doing to somebody else and it's something that you'd like to experience, there's no, it's not like, oh no, I only play with people that turn me on, or I only play with people who, I agree that asking can often be the best way in, but aren't there people who, A, have a hard time asking, and B, have a hard time even after they ask getting what they're asking for?
Yeah, there are a lot of people out there that they're very shy. They need some coaxing. Usually you can tell who they are. I mean, it's a big step for them just to go to where those things are happening. But, and you can usually pick them out. There are nice people out there. They're like, oh, look, it's a little lamb, lead him to slaughter. It's like, come here, little boy. But, there are those cliquey groups. There are those tight little groups that are pretty much scene snobs. I'm not really sure how other way to put it, is they just kind of, they're set on how they do their thing. They know these little group of people, and they won't let anyone else in, regardless if they're experienced, non-experienced, mediocre, whatever, and they'll like shun you. I mean, there are those little groups, or there's other people that they're like, hey, oh, you want to try this? Oh, I see you watching, and there's a mixture, but there's more nice people than there are the hardcore. Just I don't even want to talk to you. You're into that, and you're not into this. So there's something, and you're weird.
Is there an inequity between dominants and submissives in asking for experience? Because it seems to me that a submissive that's asking for experience is asking, will you do something to me? If you took that sort of on the converse, and I, being the new dominant who doesn't have a whole lot of experience, and I come in and say, you're submissive, can I try this on you? That sounds like, there's a higher bar of sort of trust or familiarity that you need with a person to say, well, sure, I'll let you practice on me.
Well, that all depends on the person. Everybody's different because there are people that does happen. Well, a friend of mine, she she had a guy that said that he wanted to be her dominant, and she's like, "Have you ever done it before?" He said, "No." She's like, "No, you need to go learn, go talk to someone first." But there may be some people, but then those don't usually work out too well.
Right. Well, and it seems to me that, submissives who are looking to gain experience at events or in the community can go and ask and say, I'm looking for a certain experience. Would you whip me? Would you spank me? Would you paddle me or play with me with this toy or something like that? But as a
Mhm.
dominant, you kind of have to go to the other dominants and say, will you teach me how to paddle? Will you teach me how to spank? You don't necessarily go to the submissive and say, I want
No.
to try this, will you be my demo dolly?
I mean, I'm sure it happens, but normally that really wouldn't happen because the dom really wouldn't step down like that.
Right.
But it does happen.
Well, and I like to see that too. I like to see dominants say, sure, I'll teach you how I do this. That's something I think I'm just saying, like, probably the wrong way to go about getting experience as a new dominant in the community is going around and asking submissives if they will
I
bottom for
agree.
you.
Yeah, I agree with that.
You're probably still better off going to the dominants and saying, would you teach me how to do this or that? And under their supervision, their bottom, whoever it was they were playing with, would probably be more likely to say, sure, I'll get up on this cross and let them have a few swings at me, or try fire play or something like that, as long as they know that somebody with experience is there watching.
Hmm.
So I think it's maybe a little bit different approach that submissives would want to take. Because I'm imagining on the converse of that, the submissive going to the other submissive and saying, will you teach me how you achieve subspace, take the pain, uh, endure that kind of punishment? I mean, I'm sure there's lots of good conversations that can come out of that. But, how much can they teach you about that specific kind of play? I think maybe in the rope realm, it's maybe greater than in others. Being a rope bottom may be a little more complicated than being other types of bottom, but
Well, and I feel like with that it can go both ways. I mean, the standard is obviously set. Most people want an experienced dominant, and a lot of people want an inexperienced submissive, because there's that whole thing of, like,
They can mold them into what they want.
yes, molding them into exactly what they want, and there's this kind of fresh meat mentality that's kind of caveman-esque. But also, when we're talking about a dominant with a lot of experience, you want a certain amount of experience, but you don't want too much experience, because some of those people that you go to, if they have, 30 years of experience, they're one of those people who just talks all the time about how experienced they are. At a certain point, if you've had 18 submissives in your life that have all taken your boots off the same way, and then, the new one comes along and wants to do this for you, at a certain point your experience might get in the way. It might get in the way of us bonding over that service because it's not special anymore. It might get in the way too. I mean, if you're used to a certain reaction, if you have been doing, whips for a really long time and that's your thing and you love it, and you've always gotten the same response because you have all this vast experience, and then you have me and I have a different response to that kind of stimulus, you can get kind of stuck in your experience. And if you're refusing to grow, I think that's the point where that experience starts to get you. You get real comfortable with that level of experience, and then you either don't want more or you have a very specific idea of how people should respond to your experience. And that just fucks with all your future relationships in the way of bonding or just in the way of functional play.
good points. I agree that
Yeah.
it seems that I hadn't thought of the idea of bonding over certain services or certain kinds of play, but yeah, if you're used to a certain reaction from somebody when you do this and that, or you run your relationships in a certain way that because of your experience and because of your success with it before, does it leave you a little rigid sometimes, maybe? And I think maybe a very experienced dominant or a very experienced top might also run the risk of just straight up intimidating some people. Like, well, I'm kind of into this and I'm dipping my toe in, and that lady over there, she's fucking hardcore. You know, like, I don't know if I'm ready for that. I imagine that happens, but you point out the glaring double standard that when we talk about experience being good or bad, in general, it seems like good for dominants, not so good for submissives.
Yeah, although I think there's a certain level of it depends in there. I agree on the dominant side, and I agree for the most part on the submissive side, but I know that based on the styles of play that I enjoy, being able to play with people who have a little bit more experience tends to work out better for me. I mean, maybe it's just because of the way that I play, or the types of relationships and stuff that I like to have. I tend to like people who have a little bit better sense of the things that they like and what their limits are before I engage with them.
Yeah, and I would argue that me personally, the way I feel, somebody with some degree of experience, or let's say they've done a little work on themselves, it probably stands a better chance of being a successful relationship, rather than somebody who's just kind of woken up to this and they're ready to do everything and
I have no limits.
Well, and not only that, but maybe there's an extra pressure on me to show them everything, even some of the things that I'm not into or willing or experienced myself in. All right, well, that's that.
Well, I wonder about experience as like age or experience as, I know we kind of talked about that, but I came in a little bit late. But this idea of, I'm in my 20s, so if experience is measured by 20 years of experience, I'm not going to be one of those assholes who's like, I've been at this since kindergarten. You haven't. No one's been at it since kindergarten. Doesn't count. But it's that kind of a thing. So if we're talking about years of experience, I'm never going to be as experienced as you think. If we're talking about volume or body of experience, I may be very skilled at giving needles. I may be very skilled at whatever, top skill that I have. And I wonder how you show that experience. If you can't show it in a big number like that, do you show it in people that are willing to vouch for you? Do you show it in kind of flair of what you do? Do you show it in popularity? I wonder about that.
Why is that so important, though? Like, why is it so important that everyone has to know how much experience you have and then what credits you have and who you mentored under, how many people you stuck? I mean, really, why is it so important?
I think
that's what we're saying. We're saying we want experienced dominance. So what about a young dominant? Male or female, it doesn't matter. But if you're talking about someone in that role and you're saying, I want you to have experience, I wonder what those people do in that situation, because it's...
I think, if I may, Josie, the big thing that I'm seeing is that there's this instant lack of credibility that people want to put on people who are younger. Right? I know some 22, 23...
Yeah, and I'm saying that's bullshit.
No, I know. But what I'm saying is I know some 22 and 23-year-olds that have a legit, solid 3, 4, 5 years that I've known them in the community who have come out since the day they were legal, and like I said, have shown up to all of the things and and have far more practical experience than a 40-year-old who's just come into the community. But that 40-year-old is often credited with having more experience simply because of age, and I agree with you. I think it's bullshit. But I think, to your point, people who are younger have a harder time generating that same kind of confidence in potential partners simply because of their age, regardless of their practical experience.
And Katie, I agree with you when you say, what does it fucking matter? I think in terms of desirability as a partner, or if you are available or looking to get some play at the dungeon or something, that it's important to people that they know something about their experience or level of experience if they want to seem desirable to other people to play with, partner with, hook up with. But in other senses, as far as like in the community, I find it very chest puffing, and I, when people are talking about their experience, and they need you to know that they've been kinky since they tied up
That's
their
what I'm talking.
neighbor.
That's what I'm talking about. Those kind of people.
Yeah. But again,
Yeah.
I still think that reflects on character, not on actual experience.
Mm-hmm.
I know in our community, when somebody approaches me and says, I'm really interested in X, I know that as an outside observer, I'm going to point them at the person that I feel is the most experienced. So we have this situation a fair bit where somebody will come in and say, I'm really interested in experiencing needles. And I'll say, oh, you've got to talk to so-and-so. Not only are they a nurse, but they've been doing this as a play activity for years. As a new person, I'm not going to recommend myself, but I'm going to for sure let you know who is out there to be able to give you the best experience for yourself, especially being new, especially being your first experience. Who would I recommend? And I can speak to other people's experience, sort of practical experience based on my exposure to them. How safe they are and whatever else.
I agree.
I think good experience tends to speak for itself. I don't think you have to vocalize it.
Well, I guess it's when you're vocalizing it that we're having an issue. This is something that does kind of drive me a little bit crazy about folks in the community, and some people like Al came in from a different community, and we didn't know anything about him. It was like, oh, you're the new people. He's like, well, not so new, okay,
new
been
here.
around, new here, and but I guess it was probably, and correct me if I'm wrong, Al, but that was useful information to me, so that I knew that I didn't need to hold your hand, and you kind of knew how this worked in our community, but there's just maybe a different somebody who came into the community that didn't have any experience at all. I might treat a little bit differently. I don't think that that's a bad thing, in that if I know that about them, then I'm more anxious to, hey, you should talk to this person. Let me introduce you to that person, or let's you and I talk about, have you thought about this, or what your interests are, or and I think by Al saying, no, we're not exactly the new people, I think what he was saying was, we've done the work.
Well, yeah, and I believe that I let you know just enough that you knew that, yes, you did not have to hold her hand, that we were not going to be scared by anything we were going to witness or overhear somebody say, and run out the door out of the coffee shop, and that so that you could be at ease, and if there was somebody that needed more of your attention, you could feel free to pay attention to them. We were just here to meet new people. And that was it. I just let you enough. I've been around enough that you don't have to, baby me.
Right, but if Al came in and said, I've got more experience than all you motherfuckers combined, then I'd probably treat him completely differently, and not in such a nice way.
Well, exactly. And I believe that where people have different opinions, or actually, well, there's a big consensus when it comes to a new person coming in and proclaiming the level of experience, is that I think it's because everybody that's been in the community for a while agrees that just that statement doesn't mean anything. And like she said, why do you have to vocalize or advertise your experience? So it sounds kind of suspicious. Anytime somebody has to advertise something about themselves that has not been asked of them, or that nobody has questioned, it always comes under suspicion. And you can apply that to inside of the kink community and outside of the kink community. Every time you meet somebody new, and immediately there's something they're advertising about themselves that you did not inquire about.
Yeah, and to me,
those statements become suspicious.
Yeah, to me, it usually comes across as peacocking, some kind of chest puffing, or it comes across as insecurity. That I need you to know that I'm not a total noob. And
so
maybe
they're looking for validation, because they figure, okay, this is the new guy. I'm the new guy, and Mr. Michael here, he's the head honcho here. So if I could get him to believe my bullshit, then he can validate me in front of the rest of the community.
Right.
And you don't know the reason I came from another community is because actually everybody in my previous community knew I was full of BS. So now I'm looking to a new community to try to, pull the curtains in front of.
Yeah, you pissed in that pool. You got to come out to Louisville and
I gotta go somewhere else. Yes, another state.
Well, let's talk about let's get off of BDSM for a minute and talk about sex and sex experience, good or bad. You know, sometimes too much experience not such a good thing in some people's eyes. I'm wondering what I'm getting at is, do we in our community have a slut shaming problem with experience?
Yes, I think so. And I think it's absolutely ridiculous and bullshit. I think a woman should be able to do whatever the fuck she wants whenever the fuck she wants. If she wants to go and screw 10,000 guys in a week, let her do it. And if that's not your thing, all right, so you don't have to beat the person up if they want to slang it out for fun or whatever.
I can step in here, though, and say, unfortunately, I don't think that slut shaming in this particular case is a one-way street, because I know a lot of people who will complain about dominance, especially dominant men, who collect bottoms, who are, have a reputation for tapping all the new people that show up and doing all that kind of stuff. And same thing. I mean, if we're talking about consenting adults, it shouldn't matter what they do, right? But we hear it from both
absolutely. Sides. Absolutely. If everyone's game for it, then go for it.
Okay. So our consensus here is that too much experience isn't a bad thing, but we understand that there are folks in the community who view that differently. I've played with 18 people over the last 3 years. Some people would say, only 18? And some people would say, holy shit, this person is all over the board, all over the place.
Yeah.
Well, it comes to one of those things where I just leave it at, mind your own business. Okay? It's like, we're talking about personal things, and when it comes to even on the vanilla side and the slut shaming, and I believe on the vanilla side, yes, there is slut shaming. While the same behavior that they call slut shaming, we don't perceive it as something bad in the kink community, but we have our own versions of slut shaming for other things that I see happening a lot.
Okay.
But I believe that it's just one of those things that, what does it matter to you? I'm a very proud, I won't pass judgment on anything that anybody does or says,
Right. I think part of the problem that we come across with the slut shaming idea in our community is that so much of what we do happens in public.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
That in private lives, when you're talking about how many guys she's fucked and how many girls he's fucked, and it's you don't know it unless they tell you. But when you're talking about play, you often see it out at dungeon spaces and events. So it's kind of out there on display. So it may not. I guess if you feel like it's none of their business, then you wouldn't play in public, or you wouldn't play with certain people, or as much in public.
Well, it's not that. I mean, as into what a person is into. Like for example, but now we're not talking about kinks in particular. We're talking about sex. But part of the kink community and the fetish community is being able to, within ourselves, being able to vocalize, what our kinks are. So what if this person's kink is they just want to fuck 10 different people, a day, 7 days a week. You know what I'm saying? If I'm trying to criticize that, then I'm then criticizing their kink. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's like, hey, this is my kink. Whatever it is, I just want to be able to vocalize it and feel accepted. That's part of the community, So there should be not the sex preferences or how much we have or whatever. It should not be criticized just like anybody else's kink should be criticized,
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to the, in a BDSM context, a slut is somebody who's played with more people than I have, and an inexperienced person is somebody who hasn't played with as many people as I have.
Exactly.
It's all relative to you. Whoever's driving faster than you is a maniac. Whoever's driving slower than you is an idiot.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm wondering about, we talked about getting experience when you have none. well, I guess people have an issue with when they come into the community, this idea of desirability. Okay, I'm new here. I just kind of found that I'm into this. Maybe I've had a little experience here and there. I'm meeting some people, but I'm a dominant, and I know that dominant experience is desirable. So what do I tell people that I'm just kind of getting into this, or do I stretch my own experience a little bit? Or do I feel like, well, because I don't know the dynamics of the community, I have to go in there pounding my chest and telling how awesome I am to everybody?
Well, if they're
The one
coming
I
in
hear a lot of is, this is my first munch, but I've been doing this at home a long time.
Right. Katie?
No, I was just gonna say if they're going at it and trying to stretch the truth or kind of pretend, people who are in the community, they're gonna know just by listening to the person and just seeing how they interact. They're gonna know, so it's gonna be completely obvious. They could either feed into the bullshit and just be like, okay, and smile, or completely call him out on it and leave him with his tail behind his legs.
That's what kills me, though, is exactly what you're talking about. Like, they don't. I've heard that before. And like Shane's thing, I'm just coming into the community, but I've been doing this for years. Okay, well, what counts as experience to me probably is different than what counts as experience to you. And they can tell me whatever, but it was an article that I was reading the other day that was talking about BDSM, and of course, this was like on a main newspaper channel. I don't know, it was like USA Today or Forbes or something, getting into BDSM. And they start the article, of course, because it's not a kinky readership per se, but they have to explain what BDSM is. And so the first sentence is, BDSM stands for bondage, discipline, sadism, and masochism. And immediately I had to think to myself, this author hasn't done the homework, or the person who's writing this doesn't. I don't know how seriously that I can take this, because folks in our community who have the credibility to write an article for a major newspaper about BDSM know that it's actually 3 different acronyms sort of blended into one. So when these folks come in, I came from another community, I'm very experienced, or I've been doing this a long time, or you can see through that. Katie, you were saying there are just some things that they say or some ways that they behave or that just kind of give it away. So what do you do? Do you send them packing with their tail between their legs, or do you, okay.
Well, no, I'd let them go. I just let them keep going and digging themselves deeper and deeper and deeper, and then I'll bring up something or ask them certain questions and see what they say, and they'll be like, yeah, really? Okay, and I have fun with it. But then again, I can be a bit of an asshole. And I'm an exhibitionist, so I just like to have fun, and I feed on other people. If other people are enjoying it, and if that's what they want to see, well, then I'm just going to go for it.
Mm-hmm.
So I just have fun. I don't claim to be a dom or a sub or even an expert on anything. I just have fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but then that also gets into the question of, if experience or touting your experience isn't or shouldn't be important, then knocking somebody else's down shouldn't be either, should it?
No, I didn't say it was right.
No, I mean, you're saying basically you just let them go. You just usually just kind of let them talk. And
yeah, I keep them kind of around me though, so it's like, I'll take care of you because you're probably going to get your ass beat or end up crying. So it's like, you take him on your way, and just let him be him. Let him have his fun little fantasy. Live it. It's not hurting anybody.
So what is the best way for somebody without experience to come into a community? And I'm not necessarily talking about, the sort of nightclub fetish night. I'm talking about some of the groups in town, the local dungeon, the sort of lifestylers, I guess. What is the best way for somebody without experience to come in?
Well, the only thing that I have any knowledge of around would be the Woodshed in Orlando. That was different for me altogether, because I had never been to a club like that before. Yeah, I was always at fetish factory parties down south and private parties in people's houses. I it wasn't anything like really serious. It was just more of the fun and fanfare, fashion show sort of thing. So when my husband and I went, it was very odd because I love to dress up, as you can see. I mean, and yeah, no, there wasn't any of that there. It was very, and no one wanted to talk to us. No one wanted to look at us. No, and it wasn't until about the third time we went that people started to slowly talk to us and, find out why, what was going on with us. But I knew the owners, so it was kind of, they were like, oh, so how do you know these people? Why? And I'm like, oh, okay. And then we just start talking, and then just things go from there. You ask questions if you want to do something or not, or.
Now, that experience that you had, do you chalk that up to just social weirdness, being the new person that nobody's sure if they want to speak with, or, had you been unattached, would the reaction have been different, or do you think that their perception of your experience, having never seen you before and not knowing sort of your known quantity?
Yeah, it's not knowing who you are, and I even kind of got warned that ahead of time, saying that there are like little clickies, they have to warm up to you. If they don't know you, they don't want to know you until they've seen you a few times and kind of watched how you act.
Well, that kind of speaks to my original point. We've talked about this, about sort of, the welcomingness of the community, and kind of being wary, because we do share some stuff that, we want to have some sense of confidence that, you're not just showing up to, write a news article or whatever it happens to be. But like I said, when you start showing up to things and people start recognizing your face and engaging you in conversation, they get to judge your character. Like you said, if you show up to the first thing and you're like, well, I'm here to make shit happen and look at me go, right? One, we don't really want to get to know you until we've seen you a couple of times. I mean, that tends to hurt people's feelings, but that's just the nature of the beast. I mean, you see it in library clubs, you see it in car clubs. We're not going to share, the inner workings if we don't think you're going to be here long enough to learn it.
Right.
And I have found that as people warm up to you, that's gaining experience. And then, to Al's point, I can speak to that because I was actually there when they were there at their first thing, and quiet, introduced themselves, gave a good impression, and their experience, previously in another community is only relevant in the sense that if somebody gets to know them and likes them, then they can talk to them about what other stuff they've done in terms of specifics if they wanted to play. But they've already got a personal sense of what their character is like, and is this somebody I'm even willing to pursue a conversation about play with?
Yeah, and I think, to speak to this original question, too, of, how should you come in? I think don't lead with your kink foot is probably pretty sound advice. I mean, don't lead with that. Don't come in with your resume.
Okay, so you
come
just
yourself.
Just be a person, because as we were talking about
I mean,
this.
how many times have you asked your partner? I'm thinking as we're having this conversation, I'm kind of like laughing to myself. I consider myself a fairly experienced individual in kink. I don't know if I've ever bluntly asked someone, how much experience do you have in this? Even some of the more edgy stuff that I'm into, I really don't think I ever explicitly asked, how many years have you been doing this thing? I just kind of felt it out, and my intuition never failed me because those people who I've clicked really well with and who I've played really well with just kind of carried themselves in a way that meshed with me, and whether that was because they had a ton of experience or just because we had good chemistry together, I can't really say because I don't know the huge body of experience that they had, either because I just didn't know or they didn't share it or for whatever reason. But it's the same as a sexual partner. I mean, the first conversation that you have with someone is probably not going to be, how many times have you had sex? You want to talk about that? I mean, that would be rude.
Yeah, and
you go with their character and you feel them out and see how they go with you.
Yeah, and this has gotten me kind of thinking about that, and a light bulb went off in my head as we were talking about experience and getting to know people as experience, because you're right, I haven't often had explicit conversations with people, because it seems to me that when you know the intentions of the person, and you know them sort of personally for their, what they're hoping to get out of it, what they enjoy, and that, as a dominant, are they going to care for me? If we're going to have a scene, are they a conscientious person? Do I know that they don't want to hurt me? That there's some trust there? And it seems to me that not leading with the kink foot and leading with the I'm a cool person foot is more productive for me. That speaks louder to me than experience, I guess, is what I'm. It would be more important that I think a person is a good person or somebody that I'd like to get to know better, or somebody that I know that I already like, than whether or not they have experience with it. Because that dom that has 25 years of whip cracking, does that mean that he cares about you?
Right, and I think this measure tends to be remarkably accurate as well. I mean, because why are we asking people if they have experience? We're asking them because we want to make sure they're not insane. We want to make sure that we're safe, and we want to make sure we're going to have a good time because, I mean, we're not in it for science. We're in it for fun. And so if someone has experience or not, it may not really be the root of what we're trying to get at. What we're trying to get at is, are you all of those things? Are you smart? Are you sane? Are you compatible with me? And it's just maybe like kink communities have found it easier to ask about experience because it's very easy to just expect people to list their bullet points or to like give me your resume or give me a reference. People ask for references sometimes. Maybe that's easier for them than having an actual conversation about someone to distinguish their character. But I think you get to the root of the same question when you ask either one. I just prefer to go with the "Are you a cool person?" question rather than the "Are you a super experienced whatever?" question.
But you raise an interesting point, Josie, which is that I find it fascinating that some people ask about whether or not someone has experience because they feel like it's what they're supposed to do. Right? There's these valuable lessons, like, you don't want to play with anybody who's new. You want to make sure you trust the person. Make sure you set up a safe call. And there's like this checklist of things that people seem dead set on following in terms of a list of instructions on being a good player. That
Yeah,
probably what's that?
Yeah, I don't like those people.
Well,
I think they're just as much of a problem as the people who come in and say I've been playing since I was in elementary school. Look how awesome I am. I think those people you're talking about are just as much of a problem.
No, I don't disagree with that. But when you say what kind of people ask whether or not someone has experience, to me they are on par with the people who want to come in and tell you how much experience they have.
Agreed.
You know what I mean? It's like, I guess I've always been of the frame of mind that I will put character above experience every time.
Well, that's a really good point. I mean, do you ask who prepares your food? Do you want their resume? No, you kind of just trust them. So why do you go into the kink community and say, hey, can I get here's my safe call, all right, check. Now please give me 5 safe references that you've had within the past 8 months, check. I mean, I don't know where they get that idea. But it is kind of odd, isn't it, when we think about it that way?
Well, I'll interject here because it's I get a little judgy on this topic, and I need to not be so much. And that is when I'm talking about how I value character and experience. It's because of the types of relationships that I like to cultivate, and those are generally sort of like beyond the scene in the dungeon or beyond, just a hangout and involvement in the community. To me, I'm cultivating something that's a little bit more involved, I guess. So if I just wanted to go to a dungeon and beat somebody, then this thing about experience might be more relevant than it is to me. The character might be less important, and I do want to know if they have some references, some other people that they've played with, that somebody else knows and has seen them play in this way before. Because you know, for that, just the scene that's going to happen right there and then in the dungeon, that's a little more important than whether this is a cool person or not. And for you know, for me, you know, that's just the way that I prefer to play, and the people that I choose to get involved with. But I don't want to discount the fact that these can be valuable questions for other people who are in it for different things. Took me a while to say, but I think I got the point across. Anybody?
Yes, Michael, when it comes to answering the question, how do you come into, for example, a new community? I want to give you an example of both. When you're coming in with no experience, and how do you come into a new community or meet your local community with some experience? For me, we go back to Orlando. We're talking about the woodshed. When we walked into that community, we were coming in with no experience. Okay, we were new into BDSM as a couple, as a married couple, and what worked for us was to come in there, and as soon as somebody would introduce ourselves, hey, you know, these are our names, and yes, we're new, you know, new to the community, new to BDSM, new to kink, and from the get-go, everybody knew it, and we immediately friended another couple that would have made the same statement, and we sat next to each other, and we made all the introductions to everybody around the same time, and everybody made sure that our needs were taken care of when it came to us being new people to the community and new to BDSM and kink in general, including the way everybody introduced themselves, and they made sure that everything that was going on, we understood what was going on. In this case, us going to the local munch for Orlando, the Orlando munch, and then they were talking about, hey, after here we're going to go to the woodshed, and this is our local play space, and we're going to introduce everybody, and they took us there, and yes, there was hand-holding, but then all of our questions were answered, and we felt like we had a very positive experience. Mm-hmm. Now, and so I believe that yes, if you're coming into a community, you're trying to meet local people, and you don't have experience, the best way is honesty, because we came in as vanilla people, you know, and we let our character be the thing that shine, and let how people got to know us, and people's first experience about us was based just on who we really are, our character. You know, we were not trying to come in there with titles or what we wish to be at some point and say, hey, we're just me, you know, him and her, and we're married, and we're here just to get to know each other and try to figure it out, you know, what we like. And that was the extent of it. Otherwise, people got to know the vanilla us.
And that's always refreshing to see when folks are coming into the munch groups and the play spaces in the community. I don't want to discount some people whose kink is, you know, they don't come in partnered. This isn't necessarily a lifestyle choice. This is something that they want to do. It's dirty, fun goodness. Okay, so let's take away the sort of community politics and interpersonal, and you know what they really want is to be spanked with a hairbrush. How do you go about doing that?
Well,
how do you go get some experience?
Yes, honesty is where that comes in. I don't care if you're so extreme that it might seem that we don't. Hey, my name is Al, and I just want to be beaten with a paddle. Nice to meet you. You know. And if somebody is at a local play space and they're going person to person introducing themselves that way, I like that person. Okay? Because he's being straight and to the point. So I don't want to be part of the community. I don't want to make friends with anybody. I'm not looking for the girlfriend. I'm not looking for the dumb. I just want somebody that knows what they're doing to grab a paddle and beat me. You know? And I have respect for that. And I wish that more people were like that about why they're there. You know, why are you at the dungeon? Why are you at the munch?
I agree.
Don't you wish that every man that you saw at a bar had a big sign in front of their heads stating what their true intentions are? Like, hey, my name is Al, and I'm here to fuck. Yes? No? Okay, thank you very much. I'm moving on. It will make things a lot easier, you know. And I'd rather... Go ahead.
I don't think any of us are saying that there's no risk involved there. So I completely agree with what Al's saying. But you know that there is risk involved there. I mean, you are taking a chance on someone who's telling you they're being very honest with you, but you still don't know them. You still don't know where they've come from. You still don't know what they've done. So if you want to be one of those people who's very concerned about, something bad happening or whatever you think will come of playing with someone who's super inexperienced, it does exist. I'm not trying to say it doesn't exist. But I think you do weigh the risks and you weigh the benefits. I mean, I went to my first party my first party in like a big open play space in a city I didn't live in. I went and I met somebody who I didn't know. I kind of knew of him online, but I had never met him before. I walked up to him at this party. I came with a friend. I was unpartnered. I talked to him for maybe 2 minutes. Maybe 2 minutes. I knew his first name, and his toy bag was sitting out. And I was like, hey, do you mind if I look at what you have? And he said, yeah. And I immediately, of course, being myself, I pulled out a whip. I was like, oh, this looks fun. Can we play with this? I had never played with whips before. I had never been to a big party like that before, and I didn't know him, and I did that anyway. And nothing bad happened, but that's because I felt like I was in a safe space. I felt like I knew enough of him to kind of trust that he wasn't a psycho. And really the point of that is that he took a big risk on me. Because if he had stopped and said, well, how much experience do you have? Who did you come with? Who knows you? Like, I need a reference here. Nobody could have vouched for me. I'm not a shitty bottom. It's not that I didn't know I didn't know what I was doing, but I did know what I was getting into. But he kind of had to trust me on that. And I don't know if it was his intuition that made him trust me, or maybe he had tried to ask around and see if anybody knew who I was beforehand. Probably not.
No.
I think he just took that risk, and to him it was worth it.
It was your tits. That's what it was.
Hey, you know what's really funny though, Michael? I will say, and I've heard this from a lot of women, that the difference between finding somebody creepy and finding somebody interesting is how attractive you find them. I mean, the fact of the matter is, I've heard that from a number of women.
I'm choosing to say that it's not because I was hot. It's because I was honest. Because that was
because you were a girl.
But Josie, the thing is, and to Al's point as well, if somebody comes in and says, you know what, I don't want a relationship, I don't want a whatever, I don't want this, here's just what I want, we go, well, kudos to you for being honest. But the fact is, we don't know if they're being honest, right? So you have to make a judgment call looking at a person, because you said you only talked to this guy for 2 minutes. So what is it about your countenance that made him go, I'm going to believe the words that are coming out of her mouth, and let's go with that?
She's female. It's a lot easier
that's what
for
I'm saying,
a girl.
right? We live in a world where a lot of men, I mean, I like to think that I exercise some restraint. I've been asked by people to play a fair bit, and I will just say, I'm not interested. Or I will say, I've actually had this happen where somebody said, are you interested in playing? And I said, well, I might be, but I don't know you well enough to give you an answer. Why don't we talk, get to know each other, and then I'll decide if we want to play. And they went home that same night and wrote a paper about how they had been rejected. Like,
they wrote a paper?
What's that? Well, wrote out like a FetLife post.
Okay.
About how they had been rejected. You know, that they'd asked somebody if they wanted to play and had been rejected. And I was like, if that's what you got out of that, you know, like apparently it's either yes or no. Getting to know you better isn't an option. But there are people who have approached me. I talked to a woman at a munch, and I said it was her first munch, and there was a party afterwards. This was back in the days of the mix. And I said, you know, you're going to experience a lot of things. You're going to see a lot of things that if you've thought about them are going to seem really interesting to you. But I would caution you not to rush into anything. Don't blast your way in there. Get to know some people, whatever. That night, she came and asked me to play, despite the fact that she'd only known me for one evening, and I said, don't rush into things. So
they never took your advice.
Yeah, but apparently counseling caution puts me in the driver's seat here. I'm just going to tell everybody to wait and then, you know, take advantage of them down the road. So I said no. I'm like, no, I don't think you're ready for this. You know?
Well, I'd like to kind of combine two concepts here, because Al was talking about, isn't it nice when people come in with some honesty? If all they're looking for is to be spanked with a wooden paddle, he's like, I can respect a guy that comes into the dungeon and says, you know, this is what I'd like. Are you game? No? Okay. Well, thank you. On to the next person, and then on to the next person. Well, I think, Shane, you make a point that you were talking about, you know, the difference between, what was it, creepiness and what?
Well, whether or not you find somebody interesting or creepy is how attractive you
okay.
find.
So imagine a very, somebody with $1 million smile with a little bit of charisma coming around, you can say, hey, that's cool, he comes around, he knows what he wants,
Hey, American Psycho.
But that other guy,
or like, Canadian, let's not discriminate.
I just want somebody to spank me. That's what I want. And going around from person to person in the dungeon, no, not that goes creepy. So I mean, can we give the same advice for all people, or it depends on how you go about this? Is sometimes too much honesty?
Well, you don't have to be open about those kind of things right away. Like, you don't have to come out of the gate swinging.
Oh, some people love to do it, though. They will.
Well, yes, they do.
But
it kind of bleeds into how are you able to read a room full of people? It's called tact. Okay. If I go to my local gay leather club, yes, they want you to come out swinging. They don't want to beat around the bush. There's not enough time. It's a room full of men, and they're all looking for a hookup. Right? And none of them want to be the last one standing there all by themselves. So yes, you want to come out of the gate swinging. But when you're out of the local play space where there's a lot of, you don't know anybody there. You don't know people's relationships. You don't know their dynamics of their relationships. Okay? You don't want to go and talk to the wrong person. I don't want to be this big brown guy and walk up to Miss Constance and go put my arm around her shoulder and go, hey babe, how you doing? You want to come over here and I can show you what a good spanking feels like? And that right there, that cuts my ties to my whole community, because I just completely disrespected, an elder to the community, somebody that's been here before most people. Okay, so restraint.
Hold on, I just want to visualize that for a minute. You keep talking, but if I look like I've got a spaced out look on my face, it's because I'm trying to picture that.
I was doing that too.
Good.
Katie, because you like to dress up, and I've been watching your show, and you always do it. You're good at that.
Why, thank you.
You go out to a fetish event, you go out to a dungeon, you go to even a house party that you don't. Maybe a few people. You've been invited somewhere. And somebody, let's say without experience, or somebody unknown to other people, gives you that kind of honesty. What makes your decision about whether you're going to beat on somebody or do this and that to them? Because it seems to me, and I'm only picking on you because I know that you probably get approached quite a bit for Dom type stuff. Like, would you spank me? Would you, how do you make a decision?
No, it depends completely on my mood. If I feel like doing it, then I will. If I'm not quite feeling it, then I won't. And I tell him right away. I was like, yeah, I'm not a professional, and I'm a flailer, so you're probably going to get a few bruises that are unexpected. I let them know right up front, and they don't usually care. They go, just do it. So I'm like, okay, let's have fun.
Okay. Well, I'm wondering how much the attractiveness comes in, when it's somebody, somebody approaches me that I don't know, or an unknown quantity in our community, and says, I'd like to have a scene with you. I'm looking at him saying, well, how attractive do I find this person? That is a big factor. I'm sorry, I'm shallow like that.
A lot of people are that way.
I don't know that that's shallow. I mean, that's just how we're wired. I mean, you look at somebody and you either have a response to them or you don't. I mean, that's just the way life is.
Well, I'm just wondering what a let's say an unattractive person can do in that case. Just go ask. Well, the difference between interesting and creepy might have, it's a little unfair sometimes to some people, I'm afraid. Yes,
it is, but I mean, you could have the hottest guy, and if he comes across super creepy when he first starts talking to you, he doesn't even have to talk to you. If he just kind of like skulks around and stares you down, and people can be really creepy. But then again, yeah, you might not be attracted to someone at first, but that still doesn't mean that you can't give him a chance and talk to him and kind of see what everything's about. You don't have to just shoot him down right away. You have to be totally heartless, but
sure. Yeah, but my first impression, well, usually my first answer is no, because I feel like if you want to play with me, it's something that can wait. And if you're,
there you go.
you know, if you're going to be around, if I'm going to see you again, there's no reason why we can't walk slowly into this little wading pool rather than diving into the shallow end. So, you know, that's my knee-jerk reaction. But I guess in order to get experience, maybe I'm adding to my list of advice is a little bit of persistence. You know, I don't mean nagging me. I don't mean stalking me. What I mean is, you know, when Shane says, "Hey, let's talk first," that's not rejection. That's maybe. We'll see. And I'm sorry you didn't get some last night, but that doesn't mean that you won't get this experience later.
Yeah, and I also have an issue with the way that I get approached sometimes, and I've talked to a number of people about this, which is the, you know, and I've seen this before on both ends of the spectrum, both in terms of power exchange and in gender, which is, oh, you're male, you have a toy bag, we should play. And I'm like, what? Did I miss the sign that said free play apply here? Like, I'm not exactly sure why there's this presumption that because I'm there with my toy bag, whether I'm partnered or not, you know, and maybe I'm an exception because I will often bring my toy bag to parties I'm not planning on playing at because it's what I do. You know, but I see that, you know, all the time with other people being approached because, well, you know, you're a guy and you like girls and I'm a girl and you should play with me. No, really, I shouldn't.
No, that's just your reputation preceding you. That's all.
Well, but you would figure if my reputation preceded me that they would know that the answer right off the bat is going to be, not right now, let's talk about it.
And you're saying that regardless of how the person asks that question, the answer is always the same.
Well, no, here's the thing. The answer isn't always the same. The result in the end is going to be similar, which is likely I'm not going to play with them, but how they approach me is going to dictate generally whether or not I'm going to have another conversation with them about it. You know, it's going to make the difference between an outright rejection because I don't care, even from my own perspective, how hot I think you are. If I don't like you, I'm not going to play with you. Conversely, if you don't fall into sort of my broad range of things I find attractive, if I like your personality, I'm way more inclined to continue talking to you about the possibility of playing.
Yeah, so I mean, I think we're talking about...
I think approach makes a big difference, but yeah, if somebody approaches me with this attitude like, oh, I'm available, we should play, generally my answer is going to be no.
Yeah, so I mean, we're talking about another aspect of this whole experience conversation, which is don't assume that we're all here to help you gain your experience, to expand your experience threshold, because we may be more experienced and we may be able to give you more experience, but that doesn't mean that we have to or that we want to. Depending on the person, and you know, like maybe some people have to find you attractive to want to help you gain experience. Some people have to find you to be someone whose personality that they like. Some people, I mean, one of my friends, like her big thing about she loves topping boys, and her big thing is she doesn't care what you look like, but she wants you to be really eager. And if you're just really happy to be playing with her, she doesn't care what you look like. She doesn't care what your sex is. She just doesn't care. But she does care about how enthusiastic you are. So, I mean, everyone has their own criteria, but if you make that assumption, you're going to come off as an asshole.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that there probably is an unfair expectation. Some of the folks in, you know, I'm thinking about our Louisville community that some of us are a part of, but other places that I've been to as well, where some of the more experienced players, they get kind of leaned on like that. I mean, yes, you know, will you teach a class is a different type of question than, you know, oh, this person's into needles. Will you talk to them ad nauseum about needles? Would you poke a few in them? Would you show them your process? Would you? That's, I don't know. Maybe they're just having a drink and trying to have a good time that night. That. Maybe we lean a little bit too much on some folks, or you know, make the assumptions, the erroneous assumptions that we're all kind of in it for the same thing. You know, just because play is something that you want to do, and it's not really a big. This is just what I want. I'm not interested in knowing more about you. In fact, it's better if I don't know that much about you. That assuming that I might feel the same way is probably a mistake there as well.
Yeah. And I feel like I should qualify that statement. I don't mean don't ask. I don't mean don't at, you've heard about Shane and you really would like to do cupping with Shane because you've heard that it's this amazing experience. I'm not saying don't not ask that person something because he's saying I might not be interested. I'm just saying approach them with a little bit of be
Truth.
polite, be honest. I mean, express interest, but just don't be an asshat about it.
If I had to put a single word to it, Josie, I would say sincerity.
Sure.
Approach with a certain amount of sincerity. Like you said, that encompasses be honest about your intention. Be patient because, as Michael said, you often have these situations where maybe they're just there having a drink. You know what? I'd really love to help you. Can I send you an email tomorrow? We can talk about it. Tonight's not the night. But I have always found that when people approach me being genuine and sincere, I'm really more inclined to spend the time talking to them.
Yeah, but that whole I'll send you an email or we'll get in touch. I mean, that we view that as sort of like the duty of those who are experienced in our community to lift up the folks without, as Josie was saying. Like, that's not always a good assumption,
No.
And in our community, somehow it's kind of become an assumption where if you say, go to Shane for fire cupping, and he's having a drink, not feeling like playing, didn't bring his toys, his dance card's full, or whatever number of reasons the answer might be, no, not now, or a top that comes to you about a particular thing. I'd like to know how to do that. Well, there are a lot of people who are glad to share their knowledge with you, but would it be really wrong if the answer was, well, I could teach you, but I have to charge? I'm a commodity in this community. I enjoy playing. I have knowledge that you don't have. That knowledge is worth something that I spent a lot of time cultivating, and I think that yes, I'll teach you how to do fire cupping. It'll take, 2 one-hour sessions, and there'll be, $80 a piece. That seems like outrageous, but I don't know why.
People do it.
People do it for pros with having a scene, but do people actually do the? I mean, yes, they charge for classes like, hey, I'll teach this topic or that topic, but it's like a one-on-one personal. I want what you have. Can you share some with me?
I've actually seen that once, but it wasn't in exchange for money. It was based on a particular set of circumstances.
Mm.
Is it in exchange for sexual favors?
Yeah, I think that's what he's trying to pussyfoot around.
Yeah.
It wasn't that.
I
No, it was interesting because it's exactly to your point, Michael, which is, what do people owe the community? But I will tell you that in this particular case, and again, this is all contextual. So I was at a contest, and it was a bootblack contest, and one of the contestants was out having a cigarette, and I was having a smoke, and I said, are you the kind of person that likes to share what you know? Do you do classes? Do you do whatever? And he said, no, I never share anything that I don't give lessons, I don't do whatever unless you are a part of, the local community that I'm in and sort of subscribe to our community and our way of doing things. And again, based on the context, I thought if you are a contestant whose job it is to travel and promote this, that seems like a really backwards attitude. So do I think Joe Average has an obligation to demonstrate what they know? Well, probably not. But if you're running for a title, especially a technical title where your job is to teach this skill, that seems like a really piss-poor attitude to have.
Yeah, that always cracks me up, especially about the bootblacks at the contest. Because if you were having a chili cook-off and you had a bunch of people, vying for first place, you think they'd be like sharing tips and recipes and being like, oh, you ran out of sausage? Well, here's some. I have some extra. That's what happens at the bootblack contest. Like, oh, let me tell you how I do this. Oh, I think this is a better way. It's like, and they're all running for the same title. It's like a really fucking cool thing, but it seems like counterproductive to their winning.
But I think, but I think that that's a really good example because in our community, the people who have done bootblacking or have won titles are approached constantly by people who are interested in learning that as a skill set. Mm-hmm. And the amount of time that these people devote of, sure, I'll meet up with you Saturday. And are they obligated to do it? No, but I have a lot of respect for the people who do because to me it seems like a valuable skill set to pass along. Mm-hmm. And the people who get into it
community.
What's that?
You better your community by doing that too. Even if, I mean, some people do it because they want other people to know about how to do this. You know, I found out this cool thing, let me show you how to do this cool thing too. But there is kind of a selfish value in this concept too, in that if you see someone who's just doing something wrong, you know, they're just like doing that thing that's driving you crazy, like the way that you wield whatever it is that you're wielding. Can I just help you with that? Like, can I show you how to do it better because it bothers you? You made your community better, and you made yourself feel a little bit better. So I think they're not obligated, but it can.
How did you? Hold on, I gotta stop you for just one second. How does that make your community better if you tell someone that they're not doing it the way you like it, so you need to do it the way I do it, and that makes me feel better? How does that make the community better?
I don't know. I know for me,
Let Josie speak. Go ahead, Josie.
I don't mean in terms of what's right or wrong. I mean in terms of helping out a new person. If they're coming around and they're clearly wanting some help with something because they don't understand how to do it, and it's kind of squidging you out, that they're flailing. You can see very clearly that they're flailing.
Oh, okay, if they're wanting to learn, if they're not doing it because they're just starting. Okay, well that's different. I was thinking.
No, I don't mean correcting someone. There's no right way to do it. No.
That's where I was going. That's where I was going with that.
Yeah, I could see where you got that. Yeah, because Josie, you made it sound like kind of unsolicited, like, let me show you a better way to sanitize this because my way's better, or because, you know.
No.
Yeah, okay.
Well, see, I don't really know you yet, so that's why that's how I took it. I was like, well, wait a minute, because then, okay.
I'm just that bossy. I'll walk up to anybody and tell them how to do it right.
Not a girl.
But I go ahead, Shane.
No, go ahead.
I was just sort of reiterating Josie's point about sort of assuming that folks with experience have some sort of duty to share some of what they have. I think that's something that, you know, there are enough people who are happy to share that, and there are enough people who are happy to have, you know, a little demo with you just on the side, like, sure, you know, this toy that I have and you want to see what it feels like, yeah, let's take 10 minutes and I can give you that experience. Or there are enough people that are willing to do that it has kind of become an assumed reaction that, oh, well, if I ask, then I shall receive. Well, no, and that person doesn't owe you anything as far as sharing their knowledge or playing with somebody when they're not in the mood, or they don't particularly, they're not into playing with you.
It works both ways. I mean, if I ask a bottom to play with me and they say no, I really don't get the right to ask them why they're saying no. No should be enough, right? We had this, but seriously, I mean, I see you smiling, but we had this discussion about consent, but there seems to be this odd thing where we can have a bit of an attitude about tops who don't want to share something that they know or want to play with people. Like I said, I've run into that where I've said no to people and they're like, oh, he's just a snob. Mm-hmm. I just don't like you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You know, I'm not obligated to play with anybody. You know, and where I saw a lot of discussion was in rope groups about whether or not people who do suspensions have an obligation to suspend everybody. See?
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Right, because it's a carnival ride, and everybody should get their turn, right?
Yep.
I want to be suspended.
That might be tough for those of you that can't see Al. He's not a small man.
All right. So, what body part do you want to be suspended from?
Hey, I'll leave it up to you.
We'll talk.
But when it comes to talking about the community and what's best for the community regarding people sharing experience, I see where, and remember, I'm speaking from a person that does not consider themselves to be an experience in kink, but something that you do see it a lot, in not only in the kink community, but in all kinds of communities. When you have somebody that's new coming in, but is eager to learn, and they're looking for somebody. So, how you see somebody to teach me how to do this, or how to do this better. And I believe the people that are already members of that community, the experienced, skilled members of the community, do have I hate to call it a duty, but it will be hurtful for the community because there's always somebody willing to teach. The question is, the person that is willing to teach, are they qualified to teach? Because sometimes.
Is it your turn? Can
Well,
always
yeah.
be
For example, say I'm new to the community and I really want to learn how to use a whip, right? And then people tell me, say, hey, this is the guy, that guy right there, master whatever. That's the guy you want to talk to. But, he's not available, so basically, man, he can teach me. But out of nowhere, he comes this guy, hey, I heard that you want to learn how to crack a whip, but I happen to been doing this since kindergarten. I've been cracking a whip. So let me teach you how to. Me being the new guy, I goes, well, thank you very much, sir. I really will appreciate that. Let's get started. So now, Mr. Michael, seeing this, I would think he will be doing the community a disfavor about witnessing that and knowing that the person that right now is trying to come to me and teach me the skill is not qualified to be teaching anybody that skill. He has two choices. He could decide, well, good luck to that dude, or whoever he's willing to whip with that whip afterwards when he gets home. Or do I step in and then go say, hey, you might want to skip that person, or you might want to wait until somebody more, like, you know what I'm saying? Like as a community member, where does the responsibility lie to not allow? Because, we have all witnessed this in any communities we ever been members of, where there's always somebody willing to teach, regardless if they're qualified to teach something.
Okay, so in summary, I guess what you're saying is that it isn't a duty of folks with the knowledge and the experience to share that, but doesn't it make the community a better place? Is that?
Well, yes, not if you teach, but just to make sure that people that are asking for education or knowledge, that at least they're not getting it from a place where they shouldn't.
Yeah.
Because then it becomes a dangerous game.
And when it comes to specific kinds of play, when you're asking for a very specific instructional like that, I do that. I would do that very sparingly anyways. I mean, there's 100 ways to skin a cat, really.
Mm-hmm.
And for me to say, learning from this person is dangerous, it would be unlikely to happen, because I've probably already gone to that person and said, yeah, the way you do that is fucked up and you're going to hurt somebody and I don't want to see it. But when it comes to certain kinds of play, and let's say, maybe dangerous kinds of play or things that potentially are dangerous, yeah, isn't it nice when somebody who has a lot of experience with it is willing to share that, but treating it as though it, some kind of obligation or, some kind of duty. That's the problem.
If I may translate for a second, I think really one of the things that Al is saying, though, is as community members with experience, I might not be qualified to teach needles, but if I'm at a play space and somebody is asking Joe Jeremy hands for advice on needles, do I, as a person with experience, have the obligation to say, you know what, I've been around here a long time, there's probably somebody better that you should be talking to about this? I may not be the person to do the educating, but do we, as people with experience of the community, right, a knowledge of that local community? So say Al comes in, he has some experience. He has a sense of, the things that he likes and whatever, but doesn't know the community, doesn't know who to talk to about certain things. And I see him talking to somebody that, about a particular thing where my experience says maybe that's not the best person. Do I owe it as an experienced community member to him to take him aside later and say, there are some other options out there you might want to explore?
Well, that gets into some judgment area as well. That, when you're saying Joe Jeremy hands, okay, yeah, you're basically saying there is an accepted safe practice for doing these kinds of things, and somebody that doesn't observe accepted safe practice may not be the best person to teach somebody who doesn't know. And I understand that, but you are making a judgment there that this person's way is better than that person's way. Yep. And I think sometimes you can feel comfortable making that judgment.
Yep.
But let me clarify my statement a little bit, because I want to take the judgment part out of the equation, because I'm talking before it gets to that. I'm just talking about as an experienced member of the community, when you do see somebody coming in that is looking for knowledge, at that point right there, you have to make the decision, if I, knowingly that if I don't share my experience on this particular subject that I am experienced on, somebody else will, and that other person might not know as much as I do. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not talking about a particular encounter or situation, but in general, as a philosophy, as you go through your life as an experienced person, and you have to make that decision at some point. As in, do I embrace when feasible? Like I said, no obligation, no duty. But when feasible, do I embrace it as something positive? Do I share my knowledge? Do I share my knowledge about being a submissive or being a dom or a particular play activity, or do I choose to keep it to myself? Because I've always seen the fear is in. And I'm going to use a personal example. I'm becoming close friends with a lot of people in the local community, and just recently I was talking with somebody that turns out they were very experienced in something that I'm interested in. So I was drilling them, finally kind of merge into another type of play, and immediately they stopped me and they told me, well, I have to tell you, even though I do enjoy that type of play, I'm in no position to offer any kind of advice in that type of play. And they stopped me from asking for any more advice into that type of play. And I appreciated that. Hey, I appreciate you didn't BS me, into me asking more questions about this type of, and in this example was bondage. They go, I know nothing about bondage. I like playing with it, but I can't answer any questions. I know nothing about rope. And that stopped me from asking, putting them in a more uncomfortable situation of having to answer questions that they know nothing about. Right. And it stopped me from receiving, wrong, answers.
And Shane's best answer to that is, maybe I don't have all the knowledge, but I will refer you to somebody who has the knowledge. But hopefully it's somebody that is willing and, feels some sense of, duty to share this knowledge, I suppose.
Well, yeah, but that is tact in your part. Okay, mm-hmm. Because let's say that I do want to know about bondage, and you know somebody that's really good about bondage, but now it comes on your hands. If you know this person is willing to teach people, then yes, you will refer me. If this person you do know is not willing to teach and share people, then you shouldn't even bring that up. You should just say, well, if I hear somebody that's willing to teach this experience, I'll let you know. You know what I'm saying? Because it will be a really asshole move on your part to refer me to this experienced dominant community when you already know they're not willing, or you're not sure if they're willing to teach and be bothered with people asking them 1,000 questions. Then that would be bad on you for doing that to, But if you do know this person is willing to teach rope to anybody that asks, then you can feel comfortable sending people his way because you already know, because of your relationship with him, that everything's good. Everybody's welcome.
Okay. All right. Well, what are I was just looking through some of the sort of teaser questions or some of the general on the event that we were going to be trying to address here and try to answer, and I think that we've covered it pretty well. I was wondering if you guys had any things that you wanted to add about experience. We talked about whether it's good or bad and how to get it if you have none. Any good extra advice? Areas that we didn't touch on? Something on your mind?
Two things that I wanted to mention. One was, it did occur to me that there are times when I mention my experience. And that is when I have been asked to teach. I get asked to teach by people who know me and know my experience, but when I'm in front of a group of people who are new, I feel compelled to tell them why I'm there. It is that...
Not even if they're new, just that if they don't know you.
Right, exactly. I think that you owe people, when you're being asked to present, a little bit of a biography that explains why you're here doing this.
Or why should they listen to you?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I agree.
The other thing that we talked about a little bit, Michael, this might be blurring the line a little, but I would love to have people's opinion on what happens when the public perception of your experience is negative.
When you are labeled as somebody who doesn't know shit about shit, or somebody who...
Or a bad top, or unsafe, or, the quote-unquote crazy bottom, or, bad at relationships. And when I say experience, I don't mean somebody did something. I mean there's more of a track record where you go, you know what, you're new, you may not want to talk to so and so because.
Yeah, that is touchy because, as I was saying,
where does experience become reputation?
right, but we also have to, we've covered this in other topics as well. When we're talking about judging other people's kink and judging their play, and allowing people to accept risks that you wouldn't accept, for instance. So when somebody in a dungeon says, yeah, we're going to do a cutting scene, and I say, well, what do you have? And they show me the rusty box cutter in their hand. I'm thinking, everything I'm thinking, oh my God, no, you can't do that, but my response to that was, well, you can do that, as if your bottom understands the risks and has had their tetanus shot, and is fully aware that there are cleaner, safer ways to do. If that's what they want to do, then they can do that. Now I'm making a judgment because I look at scalpel and antiseptics as being like standard procedure, good practice.
So like K-bar and spit wouldn't cut muster?
No, not with me. But I have
that's a home use then.
But I have to be careful of, yes, I feel like my way is better. I do. But I also feel like I'm making a judgment on the way that other people, usually we're talking about much more nuanced things. We're not talking about very glaring things like he wants to cut me open and rub feces into it. Okay, now we have to stop. But when we're, I'm thinking of like at a rope thing, and you see these, well, that knot over there, that's gonna pinch some nerves. Oh, they shouldn't be suspending him like that. Oh, there's only so many points of, they're making judgments about the best practices, the best way to do that, and everybody has different ideas about what that is, and others don't value the same things that you do.
Right.
The guy who's playing with Joe Germy hands doesn't value he doesn't have a problem with that like some other folks do. So,
but it's interesting because the stuff that I'm talking about, or at least the stuff I've had experience with, is people coming up to me and saying, "Well, I've talked to so and so about mentoring me," and all I can think to myself is, "I like you, and I think that's a bad plan." And that's
this rolls into a question. Let me interject this here, and we can have this discussion. It's kind of related to Al's statements. It says, as a person with more experience, do you feel obligated to provide a somewhat more watchful eye on behalf of your community members to be less or non-experienced? And framing it like that, you're talking about mentoring, and somebody, let's say they're being mentored by somebody who you view as not knowing their shit or not the best choice. What do you do? Talking to you, Shane.
Like I said, I tend to. The thing that's important to me is about being tactful. I really don't. I have to really compartmentalize things, because the reality of it is, and I try to be honest about this, is I can be really judgmental. But my judgments, I know, are not reality. I know that they're not other people's truths. And so if somebody asks me an opinion about somebody I don't like, I'll try to be as honest as I can about the topic that they're asking me. Like if they say, so-and-so wants to play with me with a single tail, in my mind I'm going, well, that guy's a dick. But that doesn't change the fact that he might be good with a single tail and might do good single tail scenes in public spaces. And I try to keep my personal feelings about that and stay on topic. Very rarely, unless I have a fairly decent concern about well-being beyond just sort of my judgment about whether or not somebody's good with something or bad with something. If I think somebody's bad with a single tail and someone agrees to play with them, it's not the marks on my shoulders and sides I've got to worry about. They'll learn pretty quick whether or not they're going to get along with that. But if I really feel like somebody is maybe biting off more than they can chew, I tend to do that as sort of privately and subtly as I can, to say, listen, I think you might want to reconsider this. And I try to frame it in a way that says, listen, you might want to actually watch them play before you engage with them, just so you have a greater sense of confidence. I really try to be tactful, regardless of what my insides are screaming. But if I really think that there's a reason for me to step in, I try to find the most judicious way of doing that.
But we know they're not going to follow your advice, so.
Well, and they never do. But to be fair, I'm not giving them advice for them. I'm giving them advice for me because I feel bad if I didn't.
Well, I wouldn't do that. I feel really strongly about not feeling obligated to. I guess the wording of the question was, do you feel obligated to kind of babysit new people, to keep a watchful eye?
Mm-hmm.
No, I feel an obligation to present myself as a resource, to make it known that, like, I'm open to talking if you ever have any questions, or if you have something specific that you know that you want to ask about. I think you should present yourself as a resource, but we're talking about adults who've stumbled into a room. You're not talking about someone who's regressed. You're not talking about someone who's, not capable of making those decisions. I mean, they're going to make the decisions they want to make, exactly like what we're saying. I mean, regardless of what you say, they're probably still going to make a lot of the same decisions.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to babysit those new people. They're consenting adults, and they didn't just stumble into the wrong room by accident. They didn't just, they were looking for the bathroom and, oh, hey, kink community. No, they came in with some idea of what happens here. So I think it's kind of the deep end of the pool. It's kind of their responsibility to at least look for that information, and it's my responsibility to be open to giving it to them.
But where I want to raise 2 points about that, though, Josie, is my particular case, and I can only speak for myself. In those situations, one of the reasons that I might give that advice, even if I don't think that it's listened to, is my experience has been that if I feel strongly enough about somebody, that a large majority of the time, if somebody doesn't take my advice and goes and does it anyway, they are more inclined to seek out my help later. Right? So I might not be able to help them in that particular moment because they're going to go, you know what, screw it, I'm here, I'm doing it. Like you said, they showed up for a reason. But when they realize that for whatever reason their enthusiasm or their whatever has kind of clouded their better judgment, they tend to be a little bit more open to advice after the fact. I've had a number of people who listened to me, didn't follow my advice, and went, you know what? You gave me some advice once and I didn't listen to it. I'd actually like to ask you again because this time I might listen to it. And to be fair, the other thing is that I've seen really, really good, smart, insightful, intelligent people, quite frankly, to use your words, regress. They get into the room, they're like, oh my God, all these things are real. Make it happen for me.
Right, but it's not your responsibility to fix those people. If they're doing that, that's their problem. I think that going to them and kind of offering that sort of unsolicited advice or taking them under your wing and insisting that you be the one to mentor them, I think it's very patronizing. And I think depending on who it is, it can be just as bad as that person going out and playing with a bad person.
I absolutely agree, which is why I tend to say my advice isn't you should talk to so-and-so or you should do whatever. My advice in that particular case is take a deep breath, take a step back, and observe before you jump in. And I say that even me. I say don't, and I will literally say that. That means including me. Don't trust me because you don't know me from a hole in the wall. Give yourself some time to make an accurate judgment. That's the advice that I give. I don't tell people to do this or do that. I simply say I can understand your enthusiasm. I think it's in your best interest to take a little bit of time. For some people, a little bit of time is 10 minutes. All right? And for some people, a little bit of time is, going back a few times before they do that. Mm-hmm. But I don't try to say, what's that?
I think Josie hit it on the head, and it's something that I hadn't, really put words to, that feeling obligated to shepherd or to protect is a mistake. I think if we're going to accept the fact that in our community that people are going to make decisions that are different than ours, and people are able to make choices, informed choices, or at least take responsibility for their uninformed choices. I think that's the way I'd rather see it roll. Plus, whenever I see somebody warning somebody off of somebody else in the community, I can look to at least a couple other motivations there.
Oh, absolutely. I don't disagree with that. And again, I can only speak to my own motivation, but I agree with you. I've seen a lot of people who are like, you shouldn't play with him. What they're really saying is, you should play with me.
Right.
Right? And I get that, which is why I include myself in that list.
Yeah.
You know, I try to be very clear. And again, because I like to tend to wait and see people make sort of better informed decision, my advice is always to wait until you feel a little bit more comfortable or a little bit more grounded. But again, yeah, I agree. That is my way of doing things. And let's face it, I'm not at every party. It's not my job to protect everybody. But, you know, when I see people who are like, woo, I'm usually like, hey, I'm glad you're enthusiastic. Just don't rush into anything. And I don't think that that's bad advice ever, even if it's unsolicited.
Well, I should clarify that when I'm saying, like, I'm very hesitant to, I don't feel obligated. That means to volunteer this. You know, if somebody comes to me and says, I'm thinking about having a scene with so-and-so or getting involved with this person, if they're asking me that, I'll give them tactfully, hopefully, my opinion. If they've asked for it, I will give it to them. But the question, I think, was, you know, are we obligated to see, you know, the new person chumming around with somebody else who doesn't have the greatest reputation for good relationships, safe play, or, you know, whatever, to volunteer ourselves to go over, you know, to rescue them from that bad actor. And no, I don't feel obligated, but I do feel like if somebody asks me, then I should give them the most honest answer I can.
Right, and I suppose I should clarify, I don't feel obligated to shepherd people in that situation either. Like I said, because even from my own frame of mind, if I see somebody chumming around with somebody I don't like, I can usually divorce myself from that. Like, my thing is always take your time, and if I see somebody's taking their time, making what I perceive is going to be a bad decision, all right, I accept that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting, though, Michael, I realize that this is apples and oranges, but I want to throw this out there as a little bit of a philosophical hand grenade. I'll take your role here as the devil's advocate, which is I don't like to provide unsolicited advice. And, of course, I already know part of the answer, which is if people are coming for that, that's what they're coming for. But the newcomers meeting is really
unsolicited advice.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And so your role in a lot of cases acts as a filter of advice before coming in. Like, here's what you should know before you step through the door. Whether that be the newcomers meeting for you know, on the Sundays, or the pre-coffee that you do every couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. That's really like you're new, here's what you need to know. Right,
but that is also it's made available and they come to it.
Right.
You know.
But it speaks to the sense of obligation, though, doesn't it?
I think it's something nice that I can offer, but I don't. No, because I mean, you sat through one of them. I know, Josie, you've been to quite a few of those, but you know, the advice that I give is mainly don't take other people's advice.
Right.
I think it's less kind of obligation and more of self-preservation is what those newcomers meetings are really for.
A lot of it, yeah, sort of like, hey, this is the community, and we don't have rules, and I'm not going to save your ass, and we have douchebags too, and you know, it's on you. Do the work, and you're on your own. That's pretty much what we're saying.
But having been to one fairly recently, it's funny because any kind of unsolicited advice that I give really is the same unsolicited advice. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? It's like a condensed Reader's Digest newcomers meeting. You know, it's not don't play with Jim because Jim's a dick. It's, you know, make sure you know who you're playing with before you play with them, and that includes me. Because we're not here to vouch for anybody. And even people we vouch for might treat you like shit, so take it for what it's worth.
Mm-hmm. Well, Al and Katie have been quiet for a little bit. I feel like we've been, like, dominating the conversation here. And we're winding down a little bit. I I wanted to give you guys an opportunity to bring some things up, or I don't know. There's some music going on. Is that just in my headphones? Are you guys hearing that?
I don't hear music.
I don't hear anything.
Oh,
I
I
don't
think
hear
I know what it
anything.
is. Somebody else's show is starting, and I had the page open. Um, anyways, I wanted to give you a chance to, bring up some things in this conversation about experience, if you wanted to. Or I do have one other. Looks like I've got a comment here. It says it's informed decisions and educating people, and at times, yeah, they stumble in clueless. I've encountered 3 in the past week alone. Discussing with a new person that there is a huge difference between online role play experience and hands-on play experience.
Oh God.
You sound like you have something to contribute there.
Ah, jeez. Yeah, I've come across several dipshits in the past few days, and I don't normally do this, but one of them was just absolutely ridiculous. I had to post. I learned how to do screenshots,
Mm-hmm.
and I posted them. I had to. I was like, all right, you can come at me pervert. I mean, you can be perverted with me, be pervy and dirty, and just I love it. But there's a way to go about it. You can be pervy and nasty and still be arousing, or you can be pervy and nasty and you're creepy and you're an asshole.
Mm-hmm.
So, but with the whole role playing thing is you can tell anybody anything and they have their own fantasy in their head. But then if they try to live that out, that's why I'm not happy about this whole 50 Shades of Grey thing. Sorry if you guys have talked about it or if you're getting away from it,
Not
but
so much.
yeah, no. Just there's too many soccer moms out there that are like, "Oh, it's just so great," and they have no idea at all.
So the idea that reading a book would give you some kind of experience, I think we can all agree, is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But looking at it as I've done some reading on the subject of BDSM. Even that seems.
Well, it's a foundation. Don't knock those people, because that's a pretty significant number of people that do their research.
Oh, well, you
Well-
think that is bad? Wait until the movie comes out.
Something.
Okay, but reading a Winnie the Pooh book doesn't make me an authority on bears, okay?
Oh no, but now you can get honey.
And now you know
Reading,
what questions to ask. Do bears like honey? Is that real from the story?
but if I open an encyclopedia or, watch a National Geographic show about bears, okay, I feel a little more qualified to speak about bears than if I read Winnie the Pooh. No?
I agree.
No.
I think I just got my sound bite there for the lead-in, right?
We could put little ears on you for the next one. You could look
Sure.
like Winnie the Pooh.
With my honey
Or we
pot.
could just call you Christopher Robin.
Oh, bother. Yeah, I need some practice with that. No, you bring up a good point, Katie, and that is, people basically equating online role play as some sort of real life play experience doesn't jive well with me. And the 50 Shades of Grey books have probably exacerbated that that notion.
Mm.
But what about somebody who has read actually good nonfiction? They've read all the articles and the how-tos, and they've watched the Naughty Boys videos, and they've done the diligence. Can they claim experience?
Have they done it? Have they actually physically done it? And if
Okay.
not, then no, there's no experience. Wow, you read a book. You can read. Congratulations, you're the purple jelly bean.
That's bad. That's like watching porn and thinking you're good at sex.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know. I think reading 50 Shades of Grey and calling it experience is like watching porn and saying you're experienced at sex. But when you're actually talking about like actual knowledge that is out there, you can say you're knowledgeable, but I wouldn't call you experienced.
Yeah, I will agree with you.
Yeah. All right. Do we have anything else here? No, I think we're good. We're going to cut this one off here unless anybody has anything else they want to bring up. Pet peeve? General bitch? No? All right. Well,
I'm just going to add that I think the concept of, we've talked about this a fair bit, but the idea that that online experience or online play. I told you to spank yourself from across the country qualifies as I've spanked somebody.
All right, well, let's not cut it there. Let's talk about that. So what does that, using that example that you just gave, yes, saying that you've spanked somebody sounds kind of far-fetched to me.
Oh, I agree.
Could you say that you have experience in DS relationships?
To be honest, I'm more inclined to accept relationship dynamics long distance than skill set for play. Maybe not much more, but some more.
Okay.
Well, that's because spanking is a verb. You can't say that you spanked someone with your words.
No, but I mean, we use that as a specific, this idea of play, like, I like nipple clamps, I use, because nipple clamps have been part of my play for 3 years. Well, watching somebody on Skype put on nipple clamps doesn't, to me, qualify you as having experience with them.
I agree. The person wearing the nipple clamps, I think, can now say they have experience with them, but the person watching and directing said action, no.
But there's unfortunately, there are a lot of
experience with dominance, though. I think there is a case to be made that they're like, all right, I have a power exchange relationship. I think that's legitimate. It's a different kind, but it.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. I'm more inclined to grant, give experience points for relationship dynamics than I am for play, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I don't know that people who have only experienced it online really have a sense of what the impact of their actions are from a DS perspective, and I think that there's more experience that can be gained, but at least there's this capacity to understand how your behaviors impact another person. I mean, I think that at least you're kind of cracking the door to some practical experience there. But anybody who, and I literally had this drunk guy talk to a girl I know, basically saying that he was super kinky, and this girl who was frustrated with his entreaties and equally drunk said, listen, what's the kinkiest thing you've ever done? And he said, well, online or in real life. And she said, and I'm done talking to you. Like clearly the kinkiest thing I've done online was type dirtier words. You know what I mean? Like, that's the bulk of the experience.
Gotcha.
Or do like chat roulette and just have your dong out there for people. Yeah, I'm a flasher now.
Don't mess with my experience. Don't my kink.
Well, from
I
my
thought you would look familiar.
My personal experience, I can share that, and I'm pretty sure we all agree, nothing beats first-hand experience. And for me, it's before actually having a partner and being in a BDSM relationship. Yes, I've been reading about BDSM, and I read all the dom and submission books and all the leather books, from the leather masters from way back in the day, all the theory and philosophy and psychology books. But the first time that I'm with my partner, my wife, Danielle, and I remember the first time that we're having a long, extended flogging and spanking scene, and I realized that she was deep into subspace. That I realized that I was beating her with this flog so hard that I was sweating profusely, and that she was pretty much unconscious. And I go, okay, all right, don't freak out, but this is kind of important. You read about this before, but you've never done this before, and it's really easy for you to fuck this up right now. So you need to concentrate on what's happening. And the experience that I gained about subspace and pleasure through pain from that moment, and the knowledge that I gained about my partner is something that no book or no advice that anybody has ever given me could have prepared me to what was happening there. And the next time that it happened, I was now knowledgeable and prepared to what was happening. But that first time, yes, I was looking at myself in the mirror and trying to look pretty dominantly about what I was doing, but in my mind I was freaking out. I said, hey, don't fuck this up, this is kind of important. And I was trying to go back of all the knowledge and all the advice that I received before, but nothing really prepared me to handle that situation. So So yes, knowledge and book knowledge and reading and through anecdotes through other people and advice. Yes, it counts as knowledge and exposure. I don't think it counts as experience.
I think that's really well said, Al.
Counts as experience. You're right. Because like I said, I had years of book knowledge, but that was just like I said, just knowledge and exposure. But once I did, then I learned. And now I can say, yes, I've done there. Yes, I've been there. And so yeah, that's the way I feel about it.
And now he knows that flogging makes me take a nap. And I'm here, by the way.
I think you make a really good point about knowledge versus experience, which is, I think a lot of people that I know and respect really do a lot of self-education, but that education, the value of that education expands with experience. Like how I can apply knowledge that I've learned through actual experience. Like you said, I'm seeing this thing, I've got to deal with it in real time, but the stuff that I've learned about it helps inform how I should respond to this situation. And I think it makes you a better player to be as knowledgeable as possible, but the experience is what ties that knowledge together.
Good.
Okay.
All right, we're going to end it there, but before we do, Katie.
Yes, dear.
You have a radio show?
I do indeed.
Would you like to tell
You
us
should
all
tell us
about
about that show.
It's funny. I called into her show last night, and she gave me a minute to plug the Kink Tank. So
Sweet.
I wanted to give you an opportunity while we still have some viewers.
Well, we'll just do it the easiest and quickest way is if you go to kinkykatieradio.com. There's pictures, videos, 18 and over, please, because there is porn, amateur porn, but it's fun. It's free because I just do it because I like it. And yeah, there's a link to all 3 of my shows when they're on, where you can get them, links you can click, easy, go, go, go. So yeah, so kinkykatieradio.com.
Right. And how often do you do your shows? Is it twice a week?
Actually, I have a Friday afternoon show, a Friday night show, and a Monday night show.
3 times a week. Yeah. Anybody else have something they want to plug? Anyone?
I think Katie has one thing left she wants to plug, which is apparently some poor girl's ass, but...
Yes, the Friday that we come back, December 5th, because we're going on a break for Thanksgiving, but a Friday afternoon show on Radio IO, it's called Sex Talk with a Dirty Girl, and my co-host, she's an itty-bitty little thing, she's taking on the Great American Challenge. If you guys don't know what that is, Google Great American Challenge. It is a big purple dildo, and she's taking it anally. She wants to go anal with it, so I am more than happy to do it, to administer.
Well, that should bring you some viewers.
Go Team America.
Anyways.
I love it.
I want to thank everybody who was part of the panel tonight. We're going to hang out for a little bit, but we're going to end the broadcast here. And to all those that have been watching, thanks for the questions. And I hope you enjoyed the show. We will catch you actually a week and 2 days from now. We had to move today to Tuesday just because of Thanksgiving, but our next show is going to be Thursday, December 11th. And,
that's 2 weeks. 2 weeks and 2 days.
I'm sorry, 2 weeks and 2 days. You're correct. So December 11th, mark your calendars. I'll put an event up here as soon as I figure out what the topic's going to be. So thanks, everyone, and we'll catch you next time.